Hello, friends, and welcome into another weekly update from your team here at NC Family. I'm Mitch alongside Jerry, our lead counsel, and we have a lot to get to for this week ending on Friday, January the 16th. So let's jump right into several things that our team has been involved with this past week, Jerry. One of those being, or two of those being, a pair of letters that we've written to leadership, President Trump, along with Vice President Vance, along with the Senate Majority Leader Thune and the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in regard to flexibility in the Hyde Amendment. Jerry, tell us a little bit about flexibility in the Hyde Amendment, and then we'll talk about those letters very quickly.
Well, we had a story this week, and if you don't mind, Mitch, I'll quote you,
Okay,
which is gives a great overview. It says, NC Family stands resolutely in favor of the Hyde Amendment. No taxpayer funding should be used whatsoever to fund abortions. There's no room for flexibility when lives literally hang in the balance. I mean, this is what, we understand by God's grace that every human life at conception is created in the image of God and needs to be protected from that moment to natural death. And the Hyde Amendment has been part, by God's grace, how our government has prohibited taxpayer funds being used for abortion or for entities that perform abortions.
Yes.
And now,
Of course, we know that the exceptions are in that. We don't necessarily support those exceptions, but those are in the federal law. There has been some back and forth, if you've paid close attention this week, to HHS and some funding from HHS specifically to Planned Parenthood, and some exchange of money back and forth there. We may get you up to date as soon as we have a little bit of clarity on that story, but certainly something for us to pay attention to in regard to some words that were used recently in regard to encouraging Senate and House leadership to have flexibility on the matter. There is no flexibility here. We've joined in with national partners like AUL, Americans United for Life, FPA, the Family Policy Alliance, and several dozens of FPCs across the country to encourage these leaders not to have flexibility, to stand firmly, strongly, resolutely, like we do here at NC Family, to make sure that life is truly cherished, not just in North Carolina, but across this nation. So you can click the link below to see those one of those letters, and we'll have another letter coming to you later next week. Women's sports, something that passed here back in 2023, but two landmark cases, the very first of those coming out of Idaho, and then one out of West Virginia, were both heard. They were kind of lumped together and then heard before the Supreme Court of the United States this past Tuesday. And Jerry, what do we need to know about those, and what you see coming on the horizon? Of course, no decision was made on Tuesday. That will most likely come in June.
right. It's interesting. When this issue first came up in North Carolina, and of course this is looking at it in other states, which now there are 26 who have passed laws saying that biological males cannot participate on women's sports teams. And, initially people are going, well, when does this ever happen? What's this a problem? Well, obviously over time this has become more and more of an issue. And sadly, there's some courts who didn't agree with state laws, and there were successful challenges to these state laws. And so what now? The Supreme Court, like you say, decided to hear two cases, one of them where it was approached from the Title IX, our federal law relating to non-discrimination, which was to help women's sports at the point in time when it was passed, and as far as equal protection. So the courts, and apparently I hadn't listened, but I've read accounts, debated for over 3 hours.
They did. It was a long debate.
The oral arguments, which I think people expected an hour for each, 3 hours. I know we could go on and on with the specifics of it, but I would like to point out again to read part of a brief we participated in for the court, and that's what the Supreme Court allows, what they call friend of the court briefs, where people can submit information, which is usually, it's in line with what people on both sides are arguing. In our case, we're obviously arguing in favor of these laws being upheld. It says, since the existence of separate women's sports programs is justified by biological differences between men and women, there are exceedingly persuasive reasons to determine eligibility for such programs using biological criteria rather than a person's sense of gender.
Absolutely.
And quite honestly, I read that and I'm thinking, why was there 3 hours of debate? I mean, it's saying, I think it's by God's grace that we understand, first of all, biblically, God created male and female, but then medicine, it's clear, and the world has been recognizing this more and more as it relates to the issue of gender confusion, which is obviously part of this issue.
Right.
That no, people are created either male or female. And so apparently, even in the debate yesterday, as far as settling on what is the definition of man, what is the definition of woman or male and female, and it's like the court's going to apparently could navigate through this and make a decision based on protecting women in sports without getting into that basic reality and fact of life.
I could see something coming from Justice Thomas when it comes to encouraging the Congress to come up with a definition of male and female. Right. Thankfully, in North Carolina, we've done that in state code. Right. But I think it would be very interesting for one of those or both of them to encourage the Congress to make a rule or a definition of what a male and a female is. Because these cases, yes, they speak to women's sports, but to be honest with you, and for those of you out there watching and listening, you understand this goes far beyond the playing field. This goes to opportunity. This goes to safe spaces for women. In many of these cases, girls have been threatened by biological males, God-made men, being in their protected, safe, private spaces. It goes to women's scholarship opportunities as well that could be afforded through sports. So Kristen Wagner did a great job. ADF did a great job speaking to this. It's certainly something to monitor and keep in mind. Of course, once again, we won't know anything about this case or the decision or opinions for this case until later in the judicial session, most likely in June. So keep an ear to the ground. We'll keep you updated as best as we can. A lot of confusion in Washington this week. In fact, one would wonder if a male a biological man can have a baby or not. One particular doctor in a Senate committee could not answer the question. You can go do the research on that yourself.
And this is, I don't know, I guess an important note, I think, always to add. The fact that we're debating these issues where people are struggling in various areas of life, this is where loving our neighbor means what is best for people. And it's not ignoring, again, most importantly, what God's design is, but also what social, medical, scientific evidence shows. And for some reason, and I think, I keep saying it, but it's by God's grace, we understand these truths. We need to pray that God would open people's hearts and minds to understand that what is best for people, and is the many things you just pointed out, Mitch. When it comes to sports, it is the reality of the sports field, the difference in the way men and women are put together.
Absolutely.
As a general rule, and as far as strength and size. But then when the areas of privacy, when you're talking about restrooms, locker rooms, showers,
it's a big deal.
All these are things that it's hard to understand why people are debating these, but the reality is we, as well as you, along with us, need to be God's voice of loving, caring, what is the right solution, and communicating it in a way where people understand we're all trying to seek what's best for people's lives.
The most loving thing in the world that we could possibly do is to lovingly tell people the truth. And by the way, no, a man cannot have a baby. Only a female, only a mother can do that. Let's jump into the North Carolina General Assembly. They met this week. Jerry, you and I were down at the building a good bit this week. Jerry, you spent a lot of time down there this week. There were several hearings while there were no voting sessions by the House or the Senate. There were some joint sessions, some House sessions, Senate sessions on Medicaid, property taxes, justice, public safety. Tell us what we need to know about all of those hearings.
Well, and I know we discussed beforehand how much you want to know and how much would be helpful. I think it is. It was interesting, even though they didn't have any voting sessions in the House and the Senate, there were committee meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and covered a lot of areas, a lot of important areas in our government. And I was telling you, Mitch, beforehand, it opened my eyes, because sometimes people can kiddingly say, I don't even know where the quote came from. I'm from the government. I'm here to help you.
Ronald Reagan, 9 most terrifying words in the English language.
Well, what I want to say, not to debate President Reagan, but there was a point that he was making
Yes.
about when the government may not be helping.
Yes.
But this week, my eyes were opened bigger and bigger about how much good the government is doing, how helpful it is to have all these things in place. Some of the most obvious ones, which I think this one's a helpful one in many respects to talk about. They had another meeting on emergency management.
Yes.
And obviously the ongoing hurricanes, Eastern North Carolina, more recently, Western North Carolina. It was fascinating to hear how the government is a vital part of what happened initially, what the long-term plan is. But this is the part that really got my attention. It's federal government, state government, local government, but what was brought up in the committee meeting this week, which was a wonderful part of the message, individuals along with government,
Absolutely.
and sometimes separate from government, stepping in, which getting back to the point of loving our neighbor.
Public-private partnership.
Government has a vital role, but we as individuals,
Absolutely.
and apparently, Western North Carolina, Eastern North, people are still stepping up and saying, I'm here to help individually, on my own, with government. It's a great encouragement that there's a way for all of us to work together, and not to say, well, I don't want their help, I can do this or whatever. We obviously realize, no, God wants all of us to work together. I could go on and on with the various committee meetings.
Yeah, I would say this in regards to some of the emergency management stuff. Thank God for Samaritan's Purse, Baptist on Mission, the myriad of other organizations that we covered in one of our most recent articles inside of Family North Carolina, our flagship publication and magazine, which you can go to our website to learn more about that. It's ncfamily.org. Amazing work being done across the state by churches, individuals, these charitable organizations who are focused on making our world better. And I understand there's that tension between what Reagan's saying and what the government actually does. And yes, it would be a frightening thing if government were to shut down tomorrow, because a lot of people would be wondering a lot of different things in regard to their well-being and public safety. Two things we mentioned last week in regard to the North Carolina General Assembly. There were giant looming question marks at the time. We can answer those with quick answers for you. Were there any veto overrides? No, sir. And they did not get together to get a budget for the current biennium, so no budget as well. Really quickly, as we wrap up the video today, want to let you know again that our theme for 2026 in the celebration of 250 years of American history and the Declaration of Independence is we hold these truths. That Jeffersonian language lets us know that we have great rights that are God-given: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and many more of those. So stay tuned for more information from North Carolina Family in regard to our theme for this year as we celebrate 250 years of American heritage and history. Some great and exciting things in regard to America Reads the Bible later in April. Our President John Rustin will be at the Museum of the Bible on April the 18th reading God's Word. The entire Bible will be read in just 1 week. It will be live on TV. It will be simulcast across not just the country but the world. So you can go to our website to learn more about that. We've got some dinners coming up. We have our podcast theme for this year, The Truths We Hold, where Adama Manfra, our research and education director, and I sit down and talk about core principles and beliefs that we hold valuable, those truths that we hold, one on governance and the Christian's involvement in government. That's coming very soon. You can go wherever you find podcasts, including our website at ncfamily.org, to learn more about that. And then I must say that if you're listening to this on Friday, it is Religious Liberty Day, and there's an article below by yours truly about religious liberty and the wall of separation between church and state that Jefferson mentions to the Danbury Baptist in 1802. So you can go to our website to read that if you haven't already received it by email, or you can click the link below. Jerry, thank you for a great update in regard to what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I know we held back because I said we could go on for another 20 minutes if y'all wanted to hear more about the other committee meetings, which it is. Again, the government has a vital role, but we all have a vital role to work along with them.
Yes.
And you along with us. They need encouragement. They need our input. And so thank you again and again for working together with us.
Yes, thank you for your participation, coming alongside of us in partnership. If you'd like to partner with us, you can go to our website. I think it's ncfamily.org. You can click on that donate button at the top of the page, and we would be honored for you to invest in the work that we do. We certainly believe it's worth investment. On behalf of Jerry, I'm Mitch, the rest of our team, including Anna Scott right behind the camera. Thank you for watching our weekly update video. God bless you, and we hope you have a great week.